This Three Beards Media podcast may contain mature themes, and if you're not down with that, we got 3 words for you. Like the podcast. Nailed it!
Would you like to sample some of my nuts?
Hello and welcome back yet again, dear listeners, to another edition of Old Man Strength, brought to you by Revelton Distilling Company and broadcasting live from the Gravitate Co-working Studios. I am Tim Johnson, joined as always by Chris Shipley. Chris, actually, I shouldn't even say as always.
I was
Frankly,
just gonna bust you for that.
Frankly, you're broadcasting more live on this podcast than I have been lately. I want to first of all say a great thank you to Drew for covering me on the last episode. My daughter was in her school play where the turkeys went on strike, and she was playing a news reporter interviewing the Pilgrims about the first Thanksgiving. So it kind of felt like more important to be here, but it was great that
100%.
she was playing a news reporter while you had a news reporter on. I thought that was very fitting.
That's right.
And Drew did a good enough job to cover for me, but not so good that he's going to replace me. At least that is what I'm going to tell him or tell
That's right.
myself.
He's no Steph Copley. He's no Steph Copley. I'll tell you that.
No, Drew, thank you very much for covering for me last time. Boy, we're right into the heart of the holiday season and all that stuff, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot more chaos and hectic whatever.
That's right.
Yeah. So how are you holding up there, Chris?
Not too bad. Not too bad. I'm limping to the finish. I turned 53 on Monday, so we'll see how that works. I always joke 6 years ago on my birthday, I did colon prep in a motel in Iowa City. So that I figure at this point I ate Jell-O and colon prep all day. So my rule is on my birthday, I'm eating whatever the fuck I want, and I don't care. So, and I'm not going to fucking Iowa City. I can tell you that.
Oh no.
So,
well, good. Yeah, I mean, I might eat some Jell-O on Monday in your honor, but not for colon prep
that's right.
in any way, shape, or form, because that does not sound fun. Well, why don't we go ahead and get into it? We got a little bit of a late start here for the people who are following live, including on their TV, which I have to say is kind of an impressive.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. So, that's right. You heard you're no Steph Copley. And it's because I mean, technically she told Tim to shut the fuck up. Right? So,
yeah, I know. This is what you say.
I'm going to go back and listen to that episode. Anyways, so I followed our guest on Twitter back and forth. He's dropped some nuggets of some old time Cyclone memories, and he hit me up when we had Blaze on and was like, hey, I hosted him on his visit. And then he was kind enough to get us in connection with Jim Walden. So are super excited to bring on former Iowa State tight end and grad assistant for Walden during the Walden era and the Kreiner era, and I don't know, maybe the Donnie Duncan era too. I don't know how long he was there. Maybe he had a COVID year or two back then too. So, but Keith Scrage, thanks for coming on Old Man Strength. We really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is fantastic. I love this setup you guys have. I think there's a lot of history with Iowa State that kind of gets brushed over at different times. And when you and I've talked a few times, both through Twitter and over on the phone, and enjoying a beer at up in Ankeny that day, we had a lot of good things to talk about, and there's a lot of background to go into this thing. But I was a part of the 6-year plan. I crammed 4-year degree in 6 years. So I was there quite a while.
That's what I did.
And then and then I went to grad school. So I think it was, I don't remember who it was. I think it was maybe Tommy Boy. They were talking about college.
Yeah, I said that the other night.
A
A
lot
lot
of
of people went to school for 7
I
years.
got in by one, you know. I always tell people I went to medical school just long enough to learn how to write. So
There you go.
that's good stuff.
Uh,
So yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to talk. You know, just kind of discuss what we did. Just kind of, if
Yeah.
you've got questions about days in the past, I go all the way back to my first game was 1976, and the veterinarian doctor from my hometown, Dr. Stickley, was an Iowa State vet med guy, and he took me down to my very first Iowa State game. We played, I believe it was Utah in 1976, and a guy by the name of Tom Bosky had a day of, I mean, every play, the PA announcers, Tom Bosky on the tackle, Tom Bosky on the fumble recovery, Tom Bosky on the deflection, Tom Bosky. And I got to actually meet him after the game, standing out in front of the Olsen Dome. And I was in awe. I was a Cyclone at that very moment in time. I mean, I grew up in Hawk country, but I was a Cyclone.
Yeah, I grew up a half hour from Iowa City. My birthplace is Iowa City, but both my folks were Iowa State grads, so I felt like sometimes the only Cyclone in Hawkeye country, particularly at growing up at that time. Certainly the early Hayden Fry years, people were definitely on the opposite end there, I think, and we'll get into that as we talk about Coach Schreiner and Coach Duncan and coming off of the Earl Bruce, Johnny Majors years and kind of the two different directions that those programs went into and very divergent paths. So I definitely understand. Like, you got to experience falling in love with Iowa State during maybe some better years, right? A little bit different for Chris and I during some more lean years.
Sure.
But yeah, there is definitely something again in Hawkeye country to being kind of one of the few Cyclones there that it feels a little bit of special ownership there as well.
Got an interesting take on that a little while later when we talk. Maybe that time between making the decision, it was pretty interesting.
Perfect.
Sure.
well, what prompted this whole series, and part of the reason bringing you on was, throughout the football season and during the summer, talk of uniforms and logos and things like that. And I would get a lot of pushback when I would say, one of my favorite God, that just messed me up when you just hit that camera. So it totally messed me up. I thought the whole thing skipped.
Good.
Okay,
That's the whole point. Yeah.
Right. So, anyways, because honestly, one of my favorite logos is the old Iowa State logo with the way, with the tornado underneath of it and the word Iowa State. And I would get so much pushback going, I don't want anything to do with that logo. It represents a terrible time and things like that. And I was like, there were some pretty iconic players there, and there was some circumstances there that you guys don't know the history. And then when people are out here going, Campbell after the Ohio game, he should, he doesn't know what he's doing. He can't coach. And I just want to go, oh, you might want to be careful what you wish for here, because you got it pretty good as opposed to before. So, and that was part of the conversation that you and I had. So let's start off there. What recruiting, what brought you to Iowa State? Obviously you said you were an Iowa State fan from the beginning, but you were recruited by other schools. So what made you pull the trigger?
So I went to Appleton, or I went to Parkersburg at the time. It was Appleton, Parkersburg, it became. Yep. And we had a really good year my junior year. Played in the state finals. Our tailback, Dave Hoagland, had rushed for 2,500 yards that year and I think 35 touchdowns in 9 ball games. And we go to the state championship game. He blows his knee out in the semifinals game of state, and I end up having a decent championship game. flash forward to the next May, and I get a phone call at night, and says, "May I speak to Keith Scrage?" And this is speaking, and this is Donnie Duncan from Iowa State University calling. And I start laughing. I'm thinking it's my friend. I mean, what the hell are they calling? I hung up the phone.
Yeah.
I hung up the phone. I thought it was my buddies just calling, just bullshitting around, you know. And Dad goes, "Who was that?" I go, "Oh, the guys are jacking with me." And phone rings again. This Keith, you know, "This is Donnie Duncan. Don't hang up the phone." I kind of laughed, and he's like, "We'd like you to come down for the spring game." I think it might have been like March when they called. I'm like, let me check with my dad. I didn't know why they were having me come down, you know. So I told him about it. He says, "Yeah, it sounds like a good thing." So I went down and met with them, and met with Mac Brown, was the offensive coordinator at the time for Iowa State back then.
Yeah.
And then they brought me down for summer camp, and went to the summer camp and had a really good camp. I think there were like 9 guys that year out of the camp that ended up becoming Iowa State. They were part of my class. I think Eric Hoondorf was there, and Gibson was there, and Itty Bitty, Curtis Livingston was there, Keith Fulton was there. Several guys were at that camp, and they offered me midway through the fall that year. And my coach, Ed Thomas, always said, you know, go to the first place that offers you, because they're the ones that want you the most. And my decision was pretty easy. But I took a few other trips, but Iowa State was always in my blood.
I mean, so you talk about Mac Brown, right? Certainly Donnie Duncan's not a name that is going to necessarily raise a lot of eyebrows outside of Iowa State, but again,
he started the Big 12.
Like, so I mean, I mentioned, you know,
he had
Earl
nothing to do with the Big 12. I mean, he went into the Hall of Fame as a coach.
Yeah,
for his impact into rest in peace. I mean,
yeah.
Died,
Yeah. So obviously there have been a lot of you know, big names, you know, certainly where Earl Bruce and Johnny Majors did at Pittsburgh and Ohio State and all of that. And you know, my dad will probably go to his grave saying that if Woody Hayes hadn't punched a player, Iowa State wouldn't have. My dad will go to his grave saying that if Woody Hayes hadn't punched a player, Iowa State's football trajectory would be very different. But you know, Pete Carroll had stints, you know, had a stint at Iowa State. Like, there have been a lot of coaches.
Jimmy Johnson, I believe, was here at one point.
Jimmy, right? Like there have been a few.
Jackie Sherrill.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you get recruited by someone like Donnie, who has someone like Mac Brown, who's going to be showing you those things.
But keep in mind, Mac Brown was 31 years old.
Yeah.
Clarence Hudson, who was the running backs coach, I believe he was the first, if not the first or second offensive coordinator in college football that was a black football coach.
Mm-hmm.
Sparky Woods was on that team. He coached head coach Appalachian State, head coach South Carolina. Jim Williams, the legendary Jim Williams, who should have been the next head coach when Donnie was let go. Jim Williams should have been the head coach. I mean, Jim Williams should have been the head coach. And if you talk to anybody else in the circle of teams of players on that team, they will tell you Jim Williams should have been that head coach.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point that you bring up, though, about all of these coaches. Like, I don't know, for whatever reason, through the late 80s through the mid 90s, it became like this old boys club. And I'm not to say that it isn't still an old boys club.
I mean, Petrino's at Arkansas.
Right. But you know, people like to you know, complain that, you know, Matt Campbell is too young to be a head coach, or you know, some of these guys. You know, I think there were some things that I don't think they understand, that coming out of that era of the late 70s and early 80s, like, there were a lot of these guys that were cutting their teeth on some programs like Iowa State.
There was a lot of great coaches on our staff. I mean, there were Bobby Elliott. I mean, University of Iowa himself. I mean, Larry Coyer, 25 years in the NFL. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
that staff was incredible, and very personal type of guys. Brought in. I don't think they had a rating system of classes back then, like you were rated whatever. You know, I do know that the class before mine with, oh my gosh, I mean, they had some great players on that team, Kevin Eggleston and Jim Lubers and Kurt Thomas, and go down the list, just guys that, you know, 3 and 4 year letter winners. And my class was a really good class. I had 5 guys that went to the NFL off of my class. Granted, we came in with 21 and we left with 8. We can talk a little bit about that. You know, I mean,
so you talked about Donnie Duncan and the other coach that should have been the coach. What led to Donnie leaving or not being the coach there? For the people that don't know the story and don't know, and you know, aren't familiar with that era, because I don't know that I know why Donnie Duncan wasn't the coach after that year.
Well, there's a lot of speculation and a lot of things that went on during that time, but I think part of it was we got off to fast starts, and then we kind of went towards the end where we didn't finish strong. You know, I think we were 5-6 my freshman year, I think is the record we had. And we started off at Tennessee, lost at Tennessee, 23-21 on a 53-yard field goal by Fouad Reves with a few minutes to go in the game. Reggie White was on that team. Willie Galt was on that team. I mean, we had a good team to go down, and that was at Neyland Stadium. Their 23-21 was the final score of that game. We had a 21-20 lead. We were on their 45-yard line with 3rd and 2, and we ran the ball, and the guy fumbled it. So they moved the ball about 15 yards, kicked the field goal, and ended up winning the game. But then we come back home, and we played Iowa, went to their place. Very first play of the game at Iowa, we throw a pick 6 at Tony Wannock. They never crossed midfield the rest of the game. We beat them 19-7. We beat their brains in. And we were good. But we just so happened to play in the same conference with Oklahoma, Nebraska, Colorado, and Okie State that were pretty damn good too. Missouri was really good back then.
Yeah. So I was having this conversation with my nephew. My nephew is 22, 23. He's in grad school at Iowa State. I live up here in Minnesota, and the Gophers just made a bowl game with a 5-7 record. And I you know, it's funny because there's like two sides of this coin. Like some people are like, just let the kids play it. I'm like, well, then just have a third. Like Chris, you saw that.
Yeah.
Me getting into a little bit of a debate there with former guest Jason DeRusha, but you know, when Iowa State finally made that Insight Bowl in the McCarney era, first 9-win season of my lifetime, there were still only 20 bowl games, right? That still meant that 40 teams were making a bowl back in the days of Earl Bruce and Johnny Majors. I mean, you look at them, they had losing conference records overall. When you're playing Nebraska and Missouri and Oklahoma over and over and over again, like you were lucky to have, you know, a 5-win conference record, and you could still be a top 15, top 20 team with a losing conference record at the time. Certainly conferences were a lot smaller, and so that made the ability to get through a conference with a winning record a lot tougher. But I don't think people necessarily appreciate how much more respected some of those teams would be in your era in the modern day, because you would have gone to like 3 or 4 bowls with the records that you guys had.
Well, my senior year, we went 6-5.
Yeah.
My second year with Walden, we went 6-5.
Mm-hmm.
And no bowl.
Yeah. Yeah. And it would be impossible to go 6-5 and not get a bowl these days. Again, 5-7 Minnesota. I've not been shy about my opinion about Minnesota sports on this podcast, but when literally 63% of FBS teams are making a bowl game, 63%, literally just by the math, that means teams that aren't good are making bowl games. It's kind of hard to teach, like my nephew who's in his 20s, what it meant to be a good team back in the 70s and 80s, and it just doesn't translate, I don't think.
I believe Earl Bruce went 8-3 and didn't make a bowl game.
Yeah.
In 1976, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just incredible.
Yeah.
And I believe they finished third in the big game that year.
It's just insane to think about that is the standard, and not look. This is called old man strength, so we're going to be old and curmudgeonly for sure.
Get up.
But it's lost a certain amount of meaning because it means that people don't understand when they look back at history. When they look back at like the absolute challenges that a lot of programs went through. Like I look at Kansas State and the years of non-winning seasons that they had before.
They were the worst college football team, according to, I think it was Sports Illustrated, in 1985 or 1986. They had the most losses of any Division I program out there. And look what, hand it to them. They did a hell of a job, turned it around. Did a great job.
They actually
at about the same time that, well, it was slightly after that, I guess, when we went kind of haywire with our stuff. I mean, it was.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really look at and how deep, if you really look deep at what happened during those times, it's unmistakable that there was no chance for us to be a quality team. It was impossible.
Well, I mentioned Hayden Fry earlier, but Iowa had set a record for consecutive seasons without a winning season before he got there. Within 2-3 seasons, he was turning them into a winner. And in a state like Iowa,
Donnie Duncan had a winning record. Donnie Duncan was 3-1 against him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. But in a state like Iowa, which now I think people are understanding can support 2 Power 5 teams. At the time, I think it seemed like it was always a one team's up, the other's down type of thing. Like it was hard to find the parity that you can find right now. I certainly
talk about that point right there, the 19.
Yeah, please.
January of 1983.
Yeah.
I mean, we're sitting there. There was probably 20 or 25 of us that went in and got a chance to speak with the athletic director, Max Shirk, at the time.
Yep.
And he asked several of us what we were looking for a coach. And I know the vast majority of the people were in favor of Jim Williams being the head football coach. There were several coaches that wanted to bring Mac Brown back, even though he was just an offensive coordinator. They saw that in him. He'd been 33 years old at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe too young, probably not. A leader's a leader. I mean, the guy was incredible.
Yep.
And he asked us, we came in and we were in the Olsen building before these meetings, and the next day they had a press conference, and we walked into, I think it might have been like the Sheeman building, I think it was. I can't remember exactly. And they had ISU's Feiner with Kreiner. And we're like, who the hell is this? we had no idea who that was. I mean, no clue. And his first words out of his mouth was, he's going to show people of Iowa how to recruit with a room full of players.
Wow. He was the old day Dion, is what he was.
I was gonna say, yeah, he was he was the original prime.
Swear to God, that was first words out of his mouth. I mean, we were at dinner that night around at training table, and myself and Kirk Thomas were sitting at the table, and he asked us what position we played. And I was a quarterback back then, and KT was a fullback, and we told him, and he laughed. laughed. I mean, it was, you want to talk about setting it on edge right from the very beginning. It was a very high level of distrust right off the bat.
Mhm.
And it kind of ran throughout the team for quite a while. There were guys that liked him. I mean, and I'll tell you, he had some great coaches on that staff.
Sure.
He had some fantastic coaches. John Fox was on that staff. You know, Chicago, your Bears.
Yeah,
John Fox.
I try not to remember the John Fox embarrassments. Anytime after Lovie Smith, I've kind of blocked out.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm currently now fondly looking at the Mark Trestman years compared to what we got going now. So
I mean, Dave Campbell coached the Cowboys. I mean,
Yeah.
these guys,
Yep.
they had some quality coaches on that staff, but you had a leader that was not. You never felt like you were a part of his team or a part of a team. You always felt like you were looking over your shoulder. You always felt questioning what was going on. You know, and then his first year comes in, he brings in 15 JUCOs. So, and you remember what Coach Walden said, you only had 25 guys you could bring in. He brought 15 JUCOs. So that's 2 years of JUCOs. That means you just eliminated 15 from your pot that you can have to grow. I mean, if you're going to build a program, look at what how many JUCO transfers has Coach Campbell brought in? Very few.
Yeah.
Granted, we do have transfers now because of the portal, which I swear to God, if they'd had a portal back then, 60 guys would have left Iowa State that day that Kreiner spoke. But, you know, it was tough. It was tough times. And when you look right now, and we have our letter winners weekends, the highest percentage of players that come back for that weekend are guys the guys that were recruited under Duncan, and maybe the first year of Kreiner. But we always have a core nucleus of 15 to 20 guys every time for every one of these things. But we had that because we needed each other as young men. You know, you don't grow up when you're living under your parents' roof. You grow up when you're away from it.
Yeah.
We got fed a pretty quick way of growing up because we relied on ourselves. We relied on each other as to support ourselves. It was tough. And at that very time, when he said, we're going to show people how to recruit, he quit recruiting the state of Iowa. I mean, he literally stopped.
Yeah.
And whoever was from state of Iowa was going to Iowa. That was good. Any good was going to Iowa after that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a struggle, right? Because, you know, Hayden did a good job of recruiting the state of Texas, but he also still owned Iowa at the time. Like he protected his backyard while going out, right? And
it wasn't the case the year before that.
Yeah, no, yeah. I think Jim has Walden had told us, you know, like what he cared about as far as like players and feeling supported as, like you said, growing up at college, right? What Coach Walden said was about growing up and not this Kreiner was a little bit more of this kind of this snake oil salesman type of thing you're seeing a lot of these days.
Never. Some guys did, but the vast majority of us just didn't believe what was being told to us. I mean,
sure.
When I went through these pictures and trying to figure out exactly who they were, and I counted 50 guys that were JUCOs in 4 years.
Yeah. 22
assistant coaches in 4 years. That's you would get done with the season and go into winter conditioning and you'd have a new position coach.
Yeah.
There was no continuity. It was tough. It was really tough.
Well,
and all we had was each other, and we relied on each other a lot. Still do.
Yeah.
I'm
some of the very best friends I have in my life were those guys. I'll raise my hand first. I was not a great football player, a collegiate football player. But I knew one thing I was going to be is I was going to be a great teammate. And kind of what I regulated myself to be. I wasn't good enough to play in day in and day out, game in, game out, but I was good enough to prepare and practice hard and play hard and practice and get other guys ready, because no job too small in a football team.
Well, and I'm sure that when you say things like you guys had each other and you always kind of had to look behind your back, it's probably because from that first day he didn't show any loyalty, whatever. He made it quite clear that you were not his guys.
I saw a thing today, I think it was today, that listed the top receivers in Big 12, Big 8 history, and Tracy Henderson is still number 9.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you guys understand how great Tracy Henderson was?
So I don't know if you. So
I don't know that I've heard of him before I started talking to you, Keith. Honestly, that's the
Tracy Henderson. Think about this. So
Is
Doc
he
Rivers.
in one of these photos? Is he in one of these photos you sent me?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. Doc Rivers, the basketball coach.
Mhm.
Yep.
He played at, was it Marquette? No, DePaul. I can't remember where he played.
I think he was DePaul, wasn't he? Wasn't he
That's what I
Chicago?
think.
Doesn't matter. He went to
Anyway, yeah.
Proviso. He went to Proviso East High School, and a freshman by the name of Tracy Henderson knocked him off of the point guard spot as a freshman.
So I'm too sore and old and tired to play softball anymore. But I used to play on a co-rec softball league for a number of years. And one day I was wearing an Iowa State hat while I was playing softball, and this ump is just giving it to me the entire game. And all of a sudden I realized
There he is.
I was like, oh shit, that's Tracy Henderson. And I went up and I introduced myself at the game. I said, hey, my name's Tim. He goes, yeah, my name's Tracy. I said, yeah, I know Tracy. I know who you are. And from there on out, he umped our softball teams for like 2 years. Like literally, he lives up here and he umps co-rec softball. Like that's how much of an athlete that guy is. Like literally, basketball, wide receiver, like literally any sport. To this day, he still wants to be around. And so from there on out,
Didn't Xavier Hutchinson? I think Xavier Hutchinson broke his
Yeah.
record,
Yes.
right? Like 83,
Yeah.
he had 83 catches. That was
Yeah.
his sophomore year.
Yeah.
He had 150 catches in Big 8 play, and he only played basically 2 years.
Yeah.
Because he got kicked off the team midway through his other year.
Yep, and he had a stint with I think the Giants and maybe one other team, and yeah, I mean he's a hell of a guy. He's super nice. He can still take it as much as he can give it. It was a lot of fun to have a little time.
I got to tell you, athletically, our receiver core, just in my class, this is just my freshman class.
Yeah.
You had Tracy Henderson, Robbie Miner, who could take the top off any defense. Curtis Livingston, he's quick as a blink. I mean, the guy is unbelievably quick.
Yeah.
You had Leon Washington out of Bettendorf, 6'3", 200-pound freshman, ran a 4.5. And then you had a guy out of Ankeny, Greg Butts, state champion in the hurdles, unbelievable athlete, played for Jerry Pizzetti. I mean, come on. I mean, we had unbelievable athletes there, and these guys were bound and determined to be 2 back, tight end, 1 flanker, and one split end, and that's what they were going to do.
Yeah.
I mean, you got a guy with David Archer who's in the NFL for how many years? Stick him in the shotgun and let him pick it apart. Throw it every down. You aren't going to run against those defenses anyway.
Well, it was a lot of those wide receivers now that would have been converted to tight ends. Like in today's game, they're converted to tight ends, but at the time they were guys that like the throw it up and get it, like the jump ball type of guys. Like Hakeem Butler, the Eagles tried to make him a tight end, right? Because the game has changed for tight ends. Yeah. Like it's changed what your role was when you played the position versus what some of those guys were playing back in the day. You know what I mean? Like it's a different style, but back then you had those guys that could just out athlete anybody.
But you think about the tight ends we had. We had Doran Geis, Dan Johnson played for the Dolphins. You had Doran Geis, you had Jeff Watka, Dave Schmoll. These guys are all conference players in the Big Eight at tight end.
Yeah.
Brett Blaney, funniest guy I've ever seen in your life. That guy's amazing. You know, I mean, he's out of Hershey, Illinois.
Yeah.
Phenomenal guy. Just
so
it's unfortunate. You look at some of these guys and the talent that we had, but there was just that lack of leadership. And I know that kind of sounds hard, but it was a lack.
It's the truth.
Yeah.
I played for Ed Thomas. All right.
Famous,
you want to do some,
famous.
Yeah.
Renowned all over the state.
Unbelievable. I'll never forget the day when Gary Collins, who was an offensive tackle at Parkersburg, he plays in the Shrine Bowl, and after the Shrine Bowl, Iowa State gives him a scholarship. And I'm a sophomore, going into my sophomore year of high school. And I remember saying to Coach Thomas, people from Parkersburg can get football scholarships? I had no idea. And he taps me on the shoulder, and he goes, if you work hard enough. And he took off running. He set the tone right there. I knew how to work hard, you know, but he always left that carrot out in front of me. That guy, you could do a month of podcasts on that guy.
So, Keith, I would be remiss if I did not ask this question, because this is something that has bugged me for the damn near 20 years since the Big 12 was formed. I miss the Big 8. I miss the Big 8. I miss playing everyone twice in basketball, once in football. I miss, I think, a greater level of parity. Like even in like the early 90s, Kansas had some really good football teams. Like I miss that. It seemed like when you're not recruiting against everybody and there aren't a billion Texas teams in the league, like when you have all of that, like I know those days are long gone. I know I'm a grumpy old man who is going to lament. My only side note, my only hope here is that someday we're gonna just have 4 conferences and a bunch of 8-team divisions, and we're gonna just be back to exactly what the Big 8 was.
You're exactly right.
Yeah, doesn't it feel like we're getting back to basically what there's gonna be 4 conferences, a bunch of 8-team divisions, and we're gonna be back to what the Big 8 was. And so when you talk about like, you know, all these all conference guys in the Big 8 and what it meant to have a winning record in the Big 8, what was playing in the Big 8 like? And do you think that players today even understand that?
Well, I don't know if how the kids feel about, you know, seeing an Oklahoma, a guy in an Oklahoma jersey come on the field, or a guy with the Nebraska helmet come on the field. But growing up, there was ABC Game of the Week, and that was it.
Yeah.
And all you had was, and back then, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you could only be on TV once. It was just once you could be on TV. So you always had the Oklahoma-Nebraska game at the end of the year, you know. So, you know, one run on the wishbone, run in the eye, and you know it was 1 versus 2 or somewhere in that vicinity where they were going to be. So going into those games, it was hard not to be somewhat awestruck at times. I mean, especially as a freshman, you know, and then as you start to get older and mature, you start to realize, you know, they put their pants on the same way, same time, you know. I mean, we played Oklahoma in the very first night game at Jack Trice, I guess it's Cyclone Stadium at the time, but Jack Trice Field, and that was ESPN Game of the Week, and we had them beat. We had them beat. It was 10-6. And they had 4th and goal at the 2 or the 1, and their guard jumped off sides. So it's 4th and 6. And we're going to beat Oklahoma. They're number 1 in the country. And they run the option to the field. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. Jeff Braswell hit that fullback in the middle of the field in the hole so friggin' hard. The entire stadium heard that hit. Jim Lubers hammers Danny Bradley, and Danny Bradley is going to the ground. And living in the margins, as Coach Campbell says, we had a guy celebrate just a little bit, and Danny Bradley flicks the ball out. And the guy that was a color commentator for the game on Saturday night, Spencer Tillman, scores a winning touchdown. They beat us 12-10. But that was, we played them as good as you could play them.
Mm-hmm.
That was quite the day. That was quite the game, quite the atmosphere. They had the Musto lights in. I mean, it was awesome. It was an awesome experience. But going to their place, it's pretty imposing to go down to, I think it was called Owen Field back in the day. I don't know what it's called now. And Memorial Stadium in Lincoln, and going to Colorado was fun. But you saw some great athletes in those places. Bosworth always gets all of the notoriety, but Paul Migliazzo was the best player on that defense. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the Big 8 is. And I also agree with you. I think that what we're going to get back to is probably 18, 12-team divisions, something like that. Mm-hmm. You're going to be in the same thing. Instead of calling it the Big 8 or the Southwest Conference, they're going to call it the Central District or whatever the hell it's going to be.
Yeah. I mean, it just feels inevitable at this point that the Power 5 conference. I mean, like you look at what's going on in the Pac-12. There are a lot of teams that are left behind in the Pac-12 that would fit in nicely into something. But like, man, the Big Ten has teams from the East Coast to the West Coast. I can't imagine a UCLA Rutgers game. Like, who is that benefiting? Particularly during, basketball season or some of these other shoulder sports. I hated the late kickoff time for BYU. I'll be honest. I'm an old man. I want to go to bed. Right?
I live in the Eastern time zone. Try that one on.
Yeah.
That was a 10-15 kick for me. And I'm older than you.
And the adjustment for them too. I mean, if you take a team from Rutgers that comes clear from the East Coast and goes and plays UCLA at 7:15 their time, they're kicking off at 10:15 at their body clock at 10:15 at night. I mean, is that really competitive?
UCLA flying across, like you say, to there to play a volleyball game on a Thursday night. Really?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make sense. I mean, it's all about the TV money. I mean, part of me would love to see the Amazon and Apple come in and just dump about $50 billion in on all of it and organize it themselves, and make everybody go to Prime or to Apple TV, and then that's where your college football is, and they say that to ESPN.
I think that's kind of brilliant, Keith. I think you are not wrong.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'm already at this point. I'm a cord cutter. Cable is already going the way of the dinosaur. Right. The way I have to watch my games anyway is already through multiple streaming services or whatever. Certainly, like you mentioned, only being on TV once. Like I remember as a kid, listening to Cyclone Radio Network. That was basically the way I knew about any Iowa State sports. Was not right. If it weren't for the Big Peach, I wouldn't have even known about Blaze Bryant's hair.
I did not host him, but I picked him up at the airport. That's right. So Robin Ross was the coach that was recruiting him, and Robin says, "Hey, we get done with the meeting," and Robin was the defensive coordinator. I don't know why I was meeting with him, but he goes, "I need you to go to the airport and pick a guy up at the airport." Like, yep. All right, who am I picking up? He goes, "You got to go get Blaze Bryant." I go, "Who's that?" He goes, "He's a recruit we've got coming in." I go, "Well, what's he look like?" He goes, "You can't miss him." And that's all he told me. That is all he told me. You can't miss him. So
he brought carry on only, but he had to check his hair and baggage claim. So.
I'll never forget this. He has he's landing at 5:00, and I'm leaving the Olsen building at 4:15. And I got to get to the airport. I take off and I pull in, and back then you could just go through security and go to the gate, right? You didn't even have to.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm standing there at the gate waiting for him, and I'm like, I have no idea who I'm looking for. And this guy comes in, and his hair is pointed like this, and it's all over the damn place. He had a big old mullet coming down the back of his head. And I'm like, you must be Blaze. Sure enough, it was. And he and I developed a very good friendship. I was the running backs GA, so I worked with Norm Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about a brilliant offensive mind. Holy cow. That guy was brilliant with Walden's staff. Yeah, there you go. It wasn't quite that elaborate, but it was.
I love the fact that he sent these to me.
Yeah, he literally I mean, Blaze.
There it is.
Blaze, I love you, man. I'm very grateful that you're a friend of the podcast. But yeah, man, I would take all advantage of showing off the hair that I have.
Right.
If that's what that looked like at that time.
That guy brought a whole new level of to our team. I mean, Joe Henderson was fantastic.
Oh yeah.
And then Blaze came in right behind him, and wow.
Chris, go back to that last one. I want to point something out.
Yep.
When you pull this up, look at the size of that man's calves.
Yeah.
Is there any reason, how do you not know that man can outrun everyone on the field?
He had some power. He had some explosiveness behind him. I mean, when he hit the hole, he hit the hole. It was gone. I mean, he was unbelievable. And without injuries, I mean, he talked about it in the NFL. I mean, it's such a political game in the NFL.
Well, yeah, I did know a lot of that was more about who you knew and more than anything. Yeah.
Did you ever remember Steve Lester?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that guy. And then our own administration killed their football team on that one when he had to take summer school, and he passes all his classes, and then they say he can only take 6 hours in the fall of his next year.
Mm-hmm.
They made it impossible for him to play. It was horrible. It's horrible.
Well, so I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges with coaches. I want to talk about some of the issues that Coach Kreiner brought to the program as far as NCAA violations. I want to talk about some of the challenges that Walden had as an uphill battle to kind of get over that. What he did certainly to bring in Troy and some of the academic challenges there as well. But we're going to go ahead and grab a word from our sponsor. We want to take a quick break here.
Okay.
But I want to kind of get into maybe we've alluded to it. But if you don't mind, Keith, maybe just some of the messier parts of what that looks like.
No problem.
So think about maybe how you're going to be politically appropriate on talking about these things when we get back from the break.
What are we talking about?
At Revelton Distilling Company, everyone has become a part of the Revelton family. From the Taylors and their daughter who helped perfect their award-winning gins, to the team who installed Lucy, our 33-foot-tall custom-made still, right down to the local farms that provide our coveted corn, and even the cows on those farms who consume our mash byproduct. Want to see the farm to flask come to life? Now you can tour Lucy and find out where we take Iowa's harvest and transform it into our finest spirits. Choose between a 45-minute tour or find out even more by scheduling a VIP behind-the-scenes tour to get the taste of the full Revelton experience. You can visit them at 1400 West Clay Street in Osceola, Iowa, or find all of Revelton's award-winning spirits at any local grocery or spirits retailer.
There are two addresses in my life that I think I would remember more than anything. 411 West Summit Street is where I grew up, and 1400 West Clay Street in Osceola, Iowa. If you get a chance, though, listeners, we would love to have you come out to 1400 West Clay Street in Osceola, Ohio on December 9th at Revelton Distilling. We are so proud that Rob and Christy Taylor have helped us bring all of this great content, all these great guests. For Keith Scrage to sit here and talk with us is just a dream come true for me, and it's because of the folks at Revelton Distilling. So please come on out and help us celebrate. We're going to do a lot of great things. You'll get to meet everyone here in the Three Beards Media family. You'll get to we're going to have a raffle. We're going to have events. We're going to have a lot of opportunity to interact. A lot of great prizes. Chris, I don't know if there's anything else you want to tease with that, but we are very excited that we get to take everything that we're doing here and share it outward.
Well, and to capitalize on that, having sponsors like Rob and Christy at Revelton, Kyle, and Gravitate allow us to do things like what we're going to do there and raise money for the Young Women's Resource Center. This is something that you and I and Aaron talked about when we first wanted to start Three Beards Media, was how we can use this for positivity and to help others. And that's kind of what we are all about. I mean, things like this spur from a funny, inside joke that Steph Copley does that led to us playing an ad to invite people to donate every month or every time we have an episode, to now we're going to have a nice fundraiser for them. So that's kind of what it's about. And we couldn't do that without the great sponsors that we have and the great support. So, and honestly, phenomenal guests that come on and entertain our listeners and our viewers and things like that. And, Aaron's not going to be there, so suck it, Aaron. He got to stay home for his daughter's birthday.
So, no, anyway, please, listeners, please come on out, come say hi. We will be excited to see you. And again, the Young Women's Resource Center is absolutely a great program to support, and we would very much appreciate your support with that. So Keith, right before that break, I said I wanted to kind of get into maybe the dirtier, messier sides of Iowa State, and I know that you're not shy necessarily about talking about some of those challenges. So you've already kind of alluded to the fact that Coach Kreiner didn't have the team. I talked a little bit earlier about like snake oil salesman coaches. I think there have been a few that have been through here. Like certainly up here in Minnesota, Tim Brewster was a guy who, really sold people on a used car and got a lemon. And I think Coach Kreiner did something similar, but he also did not leave the program in great shape for Coach Walden to take over.
That was rough. I kind of alluded to, the dependency on bringing in JUCOs.
Yeah.
But in bringing in JUCOs, not only did he bring in the guys from, and there were some great players. Don't get me wrong. There were some guys that fit in great, but there were some guys that did not belong in Central Iowa. They just didn't. I mean, it was culturally, they didn't. It wasn't a match. It just wasn't. And then you had, the processes of recruiting, the processes of getting rid of players like Tracy Henderson, Curtis Livingston, Robbie Miner. Yeah, were they upstanding and great, doing everything exactly the way everybody wants them to do? No, but nobody was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I shouldn't say nobody, but yeah, they didn't do everything perfectly right.
Sure.
But to kick them off the team because they didn't agree with what Jim Kreiner said, kind of turned their back on the other players of the team. And then Robbie Miner petitions to get back on the team, and he makes him dress in the janitor's closet. I mean, what message is that? That didn't send a message to us that it was about the team. It was about him. It was about, he isolated him and he didn't need to. I mean, doing things in practice and ridiculing players in practice in front of players. But then when it really got shitty was when you see assistant coaches fighting on the football field, fist fights on the football field, going into the locker room and sitting in the locker room and watching an assistant coach knock another assistant coach out.
Yeah.
What did that tell you? I mean, guys that were elected captains of the football team weren't put as the captain because they wanted somebody else to be the captain. So you lost the team in that respect. And then you get into the illegal things that were being done. I swear to God, if it wasn't for SMU getting the death penalty, we should have. Because just the money that was paid. I heard the phone conversations on the phone, the amount of money that was being paid. I lived with a guy that had the tape recorded, the tape recording of it. I mean, Derek Sperling. Remember Derek Sperling, that name?
Yep.
He was paid money to come to Iowa State.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that for a lot of our younger listeners, they don't, they maybe don't remember the SMU death penalty and like what a big deal that was and what a turning point that was in college football. Yeah, absolutely, and I think, it maybe just shone a big fat heavy spotlight on what was going on in college sports at the time in general across the board. I'm not going to say that, Jim Crandall
everybody was
doing
this. But didn't mean it was right. A lot of people were paying players. I mean, how we went to Oklahoma State and it looked like a Corvette car lot.
Yeah, for sure. That was going on all over the fact, but particularly when it gets to be blatant and I mean, let's be honest. You can't get away with something like that in Ames, Iowa. Like Ames, Iowa is a very different environment to try to do something like that with. And if you're going to do it, to be as kind of blatant and as stupid, frankly, as that coaching staff was, it felt. I don't know. Chris, help me out here. Like it was obvious, but also. Everyone was doing it, but it was still dumb to be that obvious about it.
Right. Yeah. I think that goes to a little bit to maybe his arrogance. From what Keith has talked about how he came in and how he began and what he said to players and the air of arrogance that you weren't good enough to play for him and the arrogance of bringing these JUCO guys and then paying them. It was almost like he was sure that he was above it and they weren't going to catch him.
I believe he won the national championship at Boise, Idaho in 1980. They were Division II. And 3 years later, he's at Iowa State. Now, I heard, you guys can look it up, but if you can find it, you can find it. But I heard that he was under investigation at a Division II school.
Yeah.
He sent graduate assistant coaches to other places, opponents, and acted like they were scouts for teams. I mean, how do you let that happen? How do you not know that bringing him in? I mean, he wasn't a fit for us. It just wasn't a fit for Iowa State. We needed a guy like Jim Williams. We needed a guy that had a tremendous amount of character and ethics and a track record of success in the state of Iowa as a high school coach. He was 112 and 10 or something like that as a high school football coach. He was one of the best offensive line coaches you'll find in your life. He was amazing. He was still coaching at Dowling until he passed away a couple of years ago. He was 89 or 90 years old at that time. And the kids revered him. They held him in high regard. The guy was just filled with knowledge. And he cared about his players. And you can see it. I mean, you can tell when kids care about players or when care about coaches.
So I've stumbled upon. Hold on, you told me to look it up. I didn't find anything on on that. But I've stumbled upon an article here from the LA Times, believe it or not, the LA Times from 1986, talking about his 21 months of unrest at Iowa State.
Yeah.
And I'll just read some of these highlights. 21-month period that he began when he kicked his 2 starting wide receivers off the team. When he dismissed second-team All-American Tracy Henderson and Robbie Minor from the team for unspecified discipline. Minor's dismissal was later changed to a 1-year suspension, but then was reduced to 6, but then never played again anyways. Never played after that. There was some issues with quarterback Alex Espinoza had been allowed to stay on the team even though he was charged with assault in connection with 2 fights in 1985. I think the one that really kind of shocked me a little bit here, and I've not heard this story before, redshirt freshman Clint Riggs.
Yeah. I was his host.
Committed suicide by shooting himself in his head. His mother said Riggs was depressed when he was told he was going to lose his scholarship for academic reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was his host when he came to town. He was from Mount Air, Iowa. Great young man, great kid. Just, I think part of it, Clint had some issues with, he didn't have the success at college like he did in high school.
Sure.
And that on top of the fact that he was going to lose a scholarship. I heard that later. I did not know that at the time, but yeah, that was, and I had 21 guys in my freshman class. We had 8 that finished. There's 13 friends that were just let go or pushed out the door. Sad. I mean, and year after year. So when Walden comes in, and yeah, we had 26 seniors that year, but there was only 8 of them that had gone all 5 years. That's the one picture I had where we were sitting on the car, had our hands up like that.
Yeah. Let me pull that up. That's the stark contrast too. When we talked to Coach Walden, what I walked away from the most with that was how much he cared about his players. The way he spoke about Troy Davis and protecting Troy and making sure that he was taken care of. And even after he had lost his job, had made an effort to go to Coach McCarney and give him some information about Troy to make sure that those things were continued. It's just one of the things that I really admire about Coach Walden.
Yeah, that was something, Chris, as you pulled that up, like that I feel like maybe people don't appreciate enough about Coach Walden, right? Coach Walden came in with not necessarily a ton of fanfare, but also with a lot of success behind him. He had been a successful coach at Washington State, right? Not a small program, not something minor. Certainly would have been very different back in, today compared to back then. But he came in knowing full well that he had an uphill battle, right? And I don't think
he realized how uphill it was.
Really? Okay.
I think it.
Tell me more about that.
I think it kind of shocked him a little bit. And I'll tell you this: it wasn't just his players that he took care of. There was my class. We could all go to him, and he had an open door for us too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was phenomenal. I mean, just a phenomenal person. It's still, just is a phenomenal person. That guy, he helped me get started in coaching. That's Robbie right behind me there. Of course, Dennis Gibson's in the front. Robbie's just right behind the hand.
Yeah.
And then you got Brett Lawrence was on the far right, and Bill Bertheson played with the Giants. Greg Leiter in the back looks like the lumberjack back there. He was with the 49ers. That dude was a big dude. That dude was the high school player of the year in Wisconsin, coming out of high school. We had some great players on our team. Some great players. He was a 3-year starter for us at defensive tackle. So was Bill Bertheson.
We made fun of Blaze's hair, but don't think that we're not going to talk about this mustache.
Yeah, right. Styling, man.
That's right.
Well, no, I think obviously you helped connect us with Coach Walden, but certainly a very genuine guy in general, but also just you can tell that he cared. Like what was was that a palpable like difference in tenor to the program when he came in?
So 86 was my last year, and then 87 I kind of was around the program. I was still in undergrad. Remember, I crammed a 4-year degree into 6 years, and then I went to Coach Walden and I asked him, I'd like to get into the coaching business, and do you have any contacts that I could, send a letter to, a real letter to inquire about being a graduate assistant? So he got me an interview with Johnny Majors at Tennessee. He got me an interview with Barry Switzer at Oklahoma. And he goes, when you get back, I want to talk to you. I said, okay. So I went down and talked to Johnny Majors and had a really good conversation with him. Went to Oklahoma. I went from Ames to Knoxville to Norman back to Ames. They weren't bringing me in. I was paying for it myself, driving the car, doing whatever. They just got through that interview process. He goes, did anybody offer you a job? And I go, no, they didn't. He goes, did you ask for a job? I said, well, I didn't really know how to ask two icons about how to become a graduate assistant. So no, I didn't. He goes, why don't you want to coach here with me? I go, I didn't know you had a position open. He goes, I've got a position open as a graduate assistant. Do you want the job? I'm like, can I have it? He goes, it's yours. So that's how I got started coaching, was with him. So I got started as a graduate assistant. And man, you want to talk about learning about football. That guy's forgot more offense than most people know.
Yeah.
Holy God. I mean, you think about it, in 89 with Blaze Bryant, we were 3 wides all the time, one running back, run in motion, empty backfield. Steve, you're better than that guy. Go get open. And Brett Oberg threw the ball. And Brett Oberg, I tell you what, you want to go to battle? I go to any battle with that dude. That dude is amazing. He stood toe to toe with Ricky Bryan. Ricky Bryan was the Outland Trophy winner, I believe, for Oklahoma in 1989, and he didn't back down. He was ready to go to blows with him. And Ricky Bryan, 6'7", 290 pounds, and Brett Oberg was 6 foot, 190. He didn't care.
One of the things that impressed me most about Coach Walden when we had him on, like a month ago or whatever, he's still a student of the game.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like he's not just like, man, I've been in beer long enough. Like I don't care anymore. Like whatever, right? He still cares. Like the way he talks about offense, like we talked about like how much the game has changed between like the old kind of like classic Nebraska I formation and all of that. Like, and he talks about how the game has evolved. You can tell when he watches a game. Like when I drink beer as a fan anymore. Like I've tried to shut off like the way that I judge beer. Well, that's not necessarily true. I still probably I know. But that's just like a little like a microcosm of what he does. What Coach Walt, you can tell at his age when he should not give a shit about anything. He should just be able to just relax and enjoy everything that he's done, and beautiful family, beautiful life, beautiful career, like everything. He still watches games with like a certain amount of like intellectual curiosity and intensity. He could still like go into any training room in the country and break down film for anybody and bring something new that no one has ever thought of.
He was creative. Well, he was innovative with what he did. I mean, sitting in the meeting with him, and then we had Norm Anderson was the running backs quarterback coach, played at UCLA, and then Steve Morton was offensive line coach. Holy Jesus! You want to talk about a brain trust going at it and scheming and putting plays together and conceptually really putting them with lesser talent in better positions to win. The fact that we went 6-5 that year was incredible, and we should have beat Oklahoma, but he benched Jeff Shute, I think. Can I tell you one story about Jim? I was kind of Coach Walden's like operations guy on the road.
Absolutely.
So he always did the Sunday night. He always did on his Sunday night show. He always interviewed the opposing coach, right? So I go get Barry Switzer, and we go to this show, and they're doing the taping of it. And first question that Jim Walden asked him, you guys might remember this. He says, last year in the national championship game against Miami, they kind of had your number, and now this year everybody's trying to tell you to get out of the wishbone. Well, how do you feel about that? And Barry Switzer says, Jimmy, last year we went to Lincoln, Nebraska, and in the first series they scored a touchdown, and they went 15 consecutive 3-and-outs, and nobody's telling them to get out of the fucking eye. And we rolled. We were laughing our asses off. And the producer, I can't remember who it was, says, all right, let's do it again. Let's not drop the F-bomb. He goes, fuck you, It was fantastic. It was fantastic. Barry Switzer was quite the character. It was awesome doing this show.
You know, it's fun because you've brought up Barry Switzer a couple of times on this episode tonight. He's one of those guys that I mean, I'd kind of forgotten about, frankly. But man, he brought a lot of not just character, but a lot of intensity to the game that I think is kind of missing. Like it's not it wasn't about recruiting or flash or any of those things individually. Like he had character up the yin yang.
Hold on. He was the greatest recruiter to ever walk the face.
Yeah, right.
And I'm not talking money wise. Did you ever hear this story where he was in Lincoln? I believe it was Lincoln, Nebraska, and they were beating Nebraska at halftime, like 21-7. And he goes in at halftime, and on a payphone, he makes a third-party call to a guy in Texas and says, "This is Barry Switzer. I'm up here in Lincoln. We're kicking the tire out of Nebraska, and I cannot relax. I don't feel good about it because I don't know if you're going to Oklahoma or Texas." That was Billy Sims.
Oh my gosh.
That was Billy Sims. And 3 years later, Billy Sims wins the Heisman Trophy.
I was gonna say this is pre-Big 12, so this is Texas in the Southwest Conference.
Yeah, so correct. But they still hated each other, and they still
played. Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say
it was the Red River Shootout. You know, when you
right,
politically correct in what people were saying. That's a great story.
So the other story, I believe you and I had a conversation the other day. I was watching the Barry Sanders documentary, and for those of you that have not watched it, you should watch it. But I picked up a little nugget when I was watching it that he said that his three schools were Oklahoma State, and Iowa State. And I had to pause it for a second, and I was like, "Wait, what?" And I think I had tweeted something out. I believe I tweeted out that they were in his top three, and my buddy Bill from Fall Starts goes, "Chris, he only had three schools." And I was like, right, that's still the top three. But you responded as to why he didn't come to Iowa State. You want to tell the reason why? So we can break the rest of our hearts. So we can break.
They offered him, Jim Kreider and the staff offered him a scholarship to come play football at Iowa State, but only as a defensive back because he was too small to play running.
Jesus Christ. Oh my! Are you?
True story.
Okay, well, I have decided to. That has broken my heart.
Chris said he had to go lay down.
I did. I was like, "You're killing me right now."
I can't. So so my partner's cousin's sons just played in the Michigan State Championship game on Sunday. Like literally, we bought the live stream, watched that on Sunday. One is the starting quarterback, one is the starting wide receiver, but then like you do in high school football, you play both sides of the ball. It's a town in Michigan that 3,000 people. It's basically the size of the town. I grew up in Wilton, Iowa. You play both sides of the ball, whatever. Star Trek athletes. One state in the long jump, but the other one actually holds the state record, not at state in the long jump. Like it's like complete record holders, but they don't want to go to school unless they can play together, playing the positions they want to play. I just can't imagine though, like saying Barry Sanders or anyone, or like how do you not have how do you discount someone that talented based off of like just some arbitrary I don't how
So, in a little bit of defense of him, the guy was little, especially in high school. He was not a big person. And back then it was the Big Eight, and it was what he did to the Big Eight in 1988 is unheard of. These people talk about, they broke his touchdown record. No, the hell they did not break his touchdown record. His touchdown record was in 11 games, and they didn't even count the game against Wyoming when he scored 4 more and had 270 yards rushing in that game.
Yeah.
Right.
We kicked his ass. You knew that, right? For 3 quarters.
No,
113 yards and 1 touchdown through 3 quarters. He goes for 180 on 6 carries and 3 touchdowns in the 4th.
It still makes me very happy to understand how well we did against Coach Gundy as well, as a quarterback for the Cowboys. Like like to understand what that program was like at that time.
They came up to our place in '85 when Thurman was really good, and it snowed and it was so cold. It might have been 10 degrees that day, and there was still snow in the field, ice in the field, and we beat them 15-10. That was in '85.
Yeah, but Thurman Thomas also missed the start of a Super Bowl because he forgot his helmet. So let's not give him.
That was not true. That was not true. Did you know what happened on that, right?
So, hold on, 1985.
I do, but it's a really fun story to be able to say that.
I'm a Bills fan. So stop it.
I actually found this game on YouTube, believe it or not.
Oh, the '85 game, yeah.
Yes, I cannot believe that this is on YouTube.
Yeah, we beat them. We beat them 15-10.
I may watch this tomorrow. Temperature is 18 degrees.
Is this Tecmo Bowl? What are you even showing me?
This is the 1985 number 7 Oklahoma State at Iowa State.
Wow, it leads the series 7-6.
Right there. Man, look at those uniforms. I would do anything for those.
Look at those red stupid helmets.
Yeah.
Yellow helmets and red helmets and
the mixture. Yeah.
Keith, I brought this up with Blaze. Why are the shoulder pads like 3 feet wider than they need to be? Like, have you noticed like
technology?
Yeah.
Remember the first cell phones?
Well,
same thing. I mean, it's just the technology of the equipment.
Tim knows. He was a big fan of Saved by the Bell and Zach and his phone.
Yeah. I was very much a fan of Saved by the Bell when Steve Buscemi was on it. Chris,
I don't know. It is what it is. I mean, that was quite the time. I mean, I still think back to the days with my guys in the team, and we get together once or twice a year still, and it's a great time. It's the greatest experience I've ever had. Love every minute of it. suffer with it like everybody else does. But
Well, so
Well,
Keith, that leads me to a great kind of segue here, because we have a question sponsored by Kyle Lehman at Wintrust Mortgage
Okay.
about what you've learned. I know that you have listened to the podcast, so you know kind of what's coming. So I'm going to let Chris go ahead and tee up exactly what this question is. Once again, sponsored by
Yep.
Kyle Lehman at Wintrust Mortgage. Please check him out. Certified to give you a mortgage in all 50 states. So please go ahead and reach out to Kyle for all your mortgage needs.
Okay, so Keith, your question is you have a time machine, you can go back 10 years and sit down with Keith from 2013. What piece of advice are you going to give Keith back then? So we'll let you think of your answer. We'll play this quick note from Kyle, and then we'll come back with your answer.
Are you in the market for a new house and unsure of the mortgage process? Want to know that you have someone looking out for you? Kyle Lehman from Wintrust Mortgage is a down-to-earth, knowledgeable lender who can be there for you in your corner. He can work with you in any of the 50 states and is just what you need to expand your home search. Kyle will work with you through the entire process with little to no work from you. Take the worry of the mortgage process out of the equation so that you can focus on looking for your dream home. Contact Kyle at www.wintrust.com/Kyle-Lehman or call him at 515-473-0546.
All right, Keith. So we asked the question, you go back 10 years, you sit down with Keith from 2013. What piece of advice are you going to give him?
this is kind of hard. Spend as much time and then some with your daughter. Get to know her better. Get to know what motivates her, what is things that she wants to do. I was so focused on my career and my job, I lost sight of my daughter. We got a great relationship now, but I missed a lot of years.
I can relate to that. I think.
Yeah, that one hit me right in the feels.
Yeah. I have a really, really great relationship with Caitlin. The relationship what I have with my oldest isn't the greatest sometimes, and I look back at that a lot with a lot of regret.
Yeah, job will always be there, or a job will always be there, but being able to spend the time, the right time, and the quality, not just the quality time, but the quantity time as well.
Yeah.
I do have to say though, Keith, you have been one of these guests on this podcast who I think has taught us a lot about the past. Not just about Iowa State athletics, right? Like just like what life was like at that time and how things have changed. And I think one thing we always try to do on this podcast is to understand that like things.
Chris, put those
change.
2 stadiums up.
Oh yeah. Yep.
yeah. Let's throw this up here.
One sec.
I mean, I think the one consistent thing in life, the one constant is that things change. Right?
There it is. That's 19. I believe that's 1985.
Yep.
By the way, I want to point out how fucking awesome tailgating was even back in 1985.
Right? Look at this.
We're still a really good tailgating school that I don't think we get enough credit for. Like, look how, like, that's still awesome tailgating.
So,
Like, you don't get tailgating like that. 1985 Iowa State still kicks 2023 Minnesota tailgating. It kicks
Just about everybody.
God.
yeah.
God.
So there's a football offices right straight north. Look, the building that's shaped like an eye. That was
Yep.
it.
Yeah.
The Olsen building.
Oh yeah.
So we tailgated down here where the rich people tailgate now. That's where I was in college. Right outside this dinky little scoreboard here. And
Yeah.
here's what's crazy. I tell Caitlin, because she was a student at Iowa State, and she had great student season tickets. And when I was there, it was in the upper level up here.
Oh yeah.
Student tickets were all the way up here in the upper level. We were nowhere close to the field.
No, I remember the TD yardometer that the students had back in the day for Troy Davis was way up, like basically on the upper deck.
And that's
There's a senior tight end. There's Mike Bush is second from the right. Craig Mahoney's an orthopedic surgeon down in Des Moines. Dave Benoit is worked for the Chicago Board of Trade. There's a dumbass me. And that big mother right there to just the right of me. Right there, that guy, Tom Stoniak. Son of a bitch. There's a picture with him blocking Willie Pless from Kansas. And Willie Pless's feet is about 2 feet off the ground, and he was head up over top him. Yeah, it came off the ball and just picked him up, just beat the shit. He was unbelievable. He was unbelievable.
So I
and
mean,
then the black fellow was Marcus Lester. He passed away a few years ago. So, and then Mike Bush, who was All-American, was a freshman my senior year.
Sorry, Tim. He spoke about this guy, and we'd be a little
yeah. No,
his photo here of he was
You're gonna make me cry.
Loved. He was pretty loved.
You're gonna make that guy was unbelievable. That guy was unbelievable. We don't have time tonight. That guy. Look up the top 50 football players in the state of Iowa, all time. Top 50 players, state of Iowa. 3 of them are from Parkersburg.
Mm-hmm.
And the 4th one, Brad Meester, started 209 games in the NFL, 13 straight seasons, and wasn't listed in the top 50. I just don't think they wanted to put 4 guys out of 2,000 people in one top 50.
So
we used to get excited when we scored touchdowns when I was growing up in Parkersburg. We were horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Horrible. This guy came in, and his son, Aaron, oh my God, you need to have Aaron on your show. Shit.
Okay.
Yeah, Jared DeVries is on this list.
Yeah.
Casey Wigman, Aaron Campman.
Yep. Wow.
So Keith, what do you think is the biggest lesson that football taught you?
For me, it was always about being the best teammate. The discipline of being a teammate, the discipline of putting team in front of self. Mm-hmm. And I learned it as a coach for years later, and even still today with what I do now. Just learning to try to help become people the very best they can be. Mm-hmm. The things that you learn in between the stripes is so much greater than anything you could learn in a classroom. And every sport's got its part, but nowhere is there anything better than on a football field. If you ever get a chance, read the book by Bill Curry, 10 Men I Met in a Huddle. Freaking awesome. He was offensive center for the Green Bay Packers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome book. But, there's so many things, so many life lessons learned. You take care of the little things, the big things take care of themselves. It's just stuff like that. I mean, Coach Campbell says, living in the margins, or, in that point. But,
yep.
There's so many little things that you learn along the way that just carry on. And sometimes I feel like we missed out, but then at other times I think our experience during our days there were greater because we became very glued. The guys that stayed were very glued.
Yeah.
And
sometimes that foxhole mentality. That foxhole mentality can bond you.
We had a lot of fun along the way. I tell you, I promise you. The Beach Riots was our party. You knew that, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Right there in the corner of Knapp and Welch.
Yep.
A lot of guys in that house, and that was maybe not one of our finest moments, but we did go.
So it's their fault,
118
everybody.
gigs.
It's their fault, everybody, that we didn't get to experience Visha. So
Oh no,
did.
no!
I
Visha
did.
went
I
on
was
for
there.
several. Visha went on several more years until
Yeah.
some guy got stabbed, and then it went on a little bit more, and then former Iowa State and former Dallas Cowboy David Irving maybe stole a stop
Stole a
sign off of
stop
Welch
sign.
Avenue.
Oh man.
Yeah. I just wanted a cherry pie. Anyway, Keith, we have taken up enough of your time. I cannot. I could literally just sit here and talk to you for hours and hours. I feel like there's so many.
If I ever get a chance to do this again, let's make sure it's in the summertime when I can sit out back and smoke a cigar.
There you go.
Oh,
Well, you know what it sounds like? It sounds like there's a remote location at Keith's house that we should.
I was gonna say, literally, I feel like this is a broadcast.
I've seen pictures, so it's nicer than my
on-site
house.
broadcast where we can all sit there, sip our Riddleton whiskey, and
I tell you what, you want to have some fun sometime when we're back in Ames or a lot of us go to Ankeny and get a room of us around. Chris, you guys come down.
Yeah,
I'm telling you,
we'll hook up the mics.
Oh my God, you guys will just
listen. I will
all
tell
I
you.
gotta do is put Tim Creasman on one side of the room and Todd Oxley on the other. We'll just.
I'll tell you. I will tell you. When I was there a couple weeks ago, I couldn't have appreciated it more. You welcomed me in, and Greg welcomed me in, and that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I will tell you this though, tonight has popped an idea. I'll tell you who I need to get you in a room with is Coach John Walling. Do you know who John Walling is?
Red Dog.
Yes. I'm telling you right now.
I lived on the same door floor.
Oh, shut up. I absolutely love Coach Walling, and man, I'm telling you, I feel like there could be some stories there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well,
Red Dog.
Well, we do have one very last question because we can't leave Steph hanging on.
That's right.
On her bit. So, yeah, I know she told me to shut the fuck up. So, Chris, go ahead and open this.
In honor of Steph Copley telling you to shut the fuck up, we decided to sumo sponsor this. So we're gonna play a clip from Steph. There'll be a QR code that if you feel the need to scan it and donate to the Young Women's Resource Center. That would be super great. And then when we come back, Keith, Tim and I have to shut the fuck up, and you get carte blanche. You can say whatever you want, which you've pretty much done anyways. But we don't get interrupted this time. So.
Hey everybody, it's Steph Copley, the woman behind the STFU segment on the Old Man Strength podcast. When I told the guys I wanted to sponsor this segment, they recommended that I make a charitable donation instead, so that's what I did. I chose the Young Women's Resource Center in Des Moines, Iowa. They're a nonprofit that supports, educates, and advocates for girls and young women ages 10 to 24. Their whole goal is to make sure that these young women become strong, self-confident, and successful. And if you know me at all, you know that aligns with my goals as well. If you're interested and would like to donate, check them out at ywrc.org and donate today. And remember, don't forget to STFU and listen every once in a while. Thanks.
All right, and we're back, and you can meet some of the people that work at Young Women's Resource Center. Saturday the 9th, they will be down there running our auction, and they'll have a bunch of information on the Young Women's Resource Center and other ways that you can help them. So we are really hoping that we can raise a lot of money for them. So, all right, Keith, Tim has to shut the fuck up, and I just want to keep saying that. So, and we'll be quiet.
I love my university. I absolutely love that, and I love the guys that I played ball with. I love the guys that I just weren't necessarily football. I was there for a long time, so I got to know a lot of people at a lot of different levels. It's a great place. Coach Thomas used to say, always be proud of where you came from. They can't take it away from you. And whenever I go anywhere, when I'm on an airplane, I got the colors flying. Whenever I'm coming back from any kind of a meeting, I got the colors flying. Whenever I'm doing a presentation for work or for anybody, the board of directors at the company I work for know they're going to know what Iowa State did that week. And when we kicked Wisconsin's ass in the basketball tournament in 2 years ago, I reveled in that because they were all from this. The company I work for is Wisconsin, and they're all Wisconsin grads.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I love you guys. Thank you so much for everything you did. It's been a pleasure. You guys are doing a great job. I've got some other folks. I'll get with Chris about some other guys that I think would do a hell of a lot better than I did here. But I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you guys and everybody out there.
You'd be hard pressed to do that, Keith, but
Yeah,
we appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
No, Keith Scrage, we are very grateful that you joined us on Old Man Strength. It's been one of the more enjoyable for me, just laughing along episodes. Shit, seriously, if you ever host Chris and I at your place with whiskey and cigars, we will be there in a heartbeat. I kind of feel like this has just been more shooting the shit with a friend. It's been fantastic. I have had
all about. So.
Yeah. Yes. Anyway, listeners, we are so grateful that you joined us for yet again another edition of Old Man Strength. Please go ahead and join us once again. I know we've plugged it once or twice or 7 times during this podcast, but please join us down at Revelton Distilling Company, 1400 West Lake Street in Osceola, Iowa on December 9th, where we will have events and a raffle, and you get to make fun of Chris to his face and tell him how silly he looks right to his face. It's the best part. You also
paying money, as long as you're raising money, you can call me whatever you want.
I mean, you also get to see my very handsome face.
Right.
It's perfect.
Yes.
Anyway, please go and check us out, and if you can't be there, please go ahead and find all the links that we share to the Young Women's Resource Center and everything else that we do to support everything that's going on. We want to thank Revelton Distilling, Gravitate Co-working, and Kyle Lehman at Wintrust Mortgage for making sure that all of this is possible. Please go ahead and check out everything else. Folks, we hope that you're having a great holiday season. Chris, anything else that we have to say?
No, we've got new episodes every week. Ball Don't Lie, Hawk's Eye View, Side of the Storm. We're running strong. Rumor is that Bitter Units is actually still a podcast. I don't know when we're gonna have another episode. That's my chance to put a dig in at Tim and Aaron. And JT.
But that's mostly at Aaron.
You know, because JT is the real star of that podcast. So.
Yeah, he is. That is perfectly fair. So anyway, yes, we have a lot of great content. So please go ahead and check that out. Keith, anything else you want to throw in there at the last second here?
I would love to read these texts that I've got from all the guys.
Yes, absolutely.
No, I'm kidding.
Oh, well, damn.
Even this isn't arable.
Well, I'll tell you what. Tell all your friends. We had quite a few listeners tonight. We hope that you guys stick around with us after Keith's here on future episodes and whatever else, because we certainly enjoy the interaction and the support. So thank you guys all for listening. Have a happy holidays. Tim, you take us out.
Yeah, we thank you very much, dear listeners. And with that, we will see you guys next time.
See you.